Hi, my name is Brian and I'm the HiPop Professor. Today, I'd like to talk about rainbows in the hobby and really their advent and how did these even begin? I feel like chasing the rainbow is one of the most common ways for ultramodern collectors to engage with the hobby and chase the rainbow. And, with 30, 40, 75 different parallels that now exist in a given set, yeah, that's a lot to chase. That's a fun way that one may choose to engage with the hobby. But where did this madness begin? And so I want to talk a little bit about what was the first rainbow? Do we even know? How do we define rainbow? And so it kind of just starts with the advent of the parallel. And so I'd like to go ahead and turn the camera around, talk a little bit about early hobby rainbows in the early to mid 90s, and then share one of the pickup I recently got that I'm very happy about, very happy with, pleased with, and can't wait to share with all of you. So let's turn the camera around and talk about some of these early parallels in the hobby. Okay, so if we're going to by talking about rainbows, we really have to back up a little bit further and start talking about parallels. And so the very first, what most would call parallels in the hobby, was in 1992 Topps Gold. And the Topps Gold parallel, this was the first time that we had a 1 per pack insert, and it was a parallel where we have the exact same image again, but something has been done to the card. In this case, we have some gold foil applied to the nameplate and the team at the very bottom. And so this was the first time that the entire set, all of the cards in that set, had a Topps Gold parallel, again, seated 1 per pack, and it made it, well, more exclusive, a tougher version of that card to find. And this was the first time that we'd had this. Now, there's another bit of a debate, but I don't really think it's much of a debate. What about other cards like Topps Tiffany's or Fleer Glossies? And because they are not pack pulled, they are not inserted along with the base set cards, I do not consider those to be true parallels. I would call it a variant, but not in the sense that we're chasing parallels and chasing rainbows. But here's the thing, 1 parallel does not a rainbow make. You need more than 2 colors. And that's another thing too. If we have 1 base card and 1 parallel, it's you think of the word rainbow, at least I think of multiple colors. So when did colors start to come into the picture? Because gold, yeah, it's fun to have little gold accents. But also in 92, Topps was not the only company that started experimenting with parallels. Enter Leaf. 92 Leaf had their own parallel called the Black Gold. And so not only did Leaf also have gold accents, but they had a color, namely black, emphasized with that gold leaf. And so we had the Leaf Black Gold parallel, also 1 per pack. And so, well, now we've got a color. Well, there's the rainbow. Video over. Well, not quite. You see, I think that there's a difference between having 1 parallel, like a 95 Fleer Ultra and a 95 Fleer Ultra Gold Medallion. It's like, okay, you got a parallel, but until you get at least the 3rd parallel in there, the 3rd parallel deep, I don't think we can really call it a rainbow until we're at least 3 parallels in. And that, in fact, did not happen in 92. Now, 93, they had some parallels there too. Look, they continued with Topps Gold, 93, and Stadium Club got into the mix with their first day production. They would later call first day issue, and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the first 3-tiered parallel, we got a couple of contenders here, starting in 94. So 94 Collector's Choice, we've got the regular base card. We had the 1 per pack insert that was the silver signature. And again, you got those 1 per pack. But then once per box, in a 36-pack box, you would get a gold signature. And so we've got the regular, we've got the silver, we've got the gold signature parallels. And now again, we've got, well, is this a rainbow? And I think some people would say, yes, this is a rainbow. We've got this regular, the silver, the gold. And silver and gold are definitely colors. And so there you have it. Video over. It's like, well, hold on a second. Not so fast. Some would also say that, really we have, well, these cards are basically the same except for one little facsimile signature on there, and then even these aren't that different. Yeah, they've got a golden color border and all that, but is that really a rainbow? Because often, not always, but often rainbows will have, like I said, more distinct colors or more features or something like that. So maybe this is considered a rainbow. Maybe the face of the card needs a more distinctive alteration because these are virtually the same. So what do we think about that? Well, in 94 we had another, but this is the first time that we went from having basically a 1 per pack parallel to now a 1 per box parallel, something very exclusive, which even to this day these cards have tremendously difficult true odds to hit because of how big these sets were. And so to try to get that gold signature with a notable player, an all-star Hall of Famer, they can be tough to track down, especially in good condition. This one's got a bit centering issue. But yeah, trying to find some of these even in PSA 9s are almost impossible. All right, so marching along, 94 Pinnacle, one of my very favorite sets, also happened to have 2 parallel versions of it. We had the Museum Collection, the beautiful Dufex version of that card, but then of course they had the Artist Proof stamp. And so again, not 1 per pack. These were 1 in 3, 1 in 4 packs, whereas these Artist Proofs were in fact 1 per box, 1 per 36 packs. And again, likewise, these were really tough to find, really tough to get. But similarly, as with the others that we had, the actual face of the card, let me zoom out just a skosh here. There we go. See these a little bit better. The background card doesn't actually change. It's just literally a gold stamp, which is fascinating to me that the card that looks the coolest is by far the Museum. I mean, this, the Dufex that's on there is just fantastic, although the Maddox is a rather dark card, and so the effect is largely lost on this particular version, this particular sort of dark background card. But still, we now have 3 distinct tiers of insert, or parallel rather. And so is this a rainbow? Maybe, perhaps. But I would contend that there is something else that we would consider as well for being another one. So we'll look at another one in just a second here. So whether or not we would consider something like 94 Pinnacle a rainbow in the sense of the word that makes sense for what we're talking about in the hobby, okay, that may not be conclusive, but we are marching ever closer toward what we would call a rainbow. And I think that by anyone's definition, by the time we hit 96, we are there. Look, we got Select Certified, has their reds and their blues, and mirror reds, mirror blues, mirror golds, Artist Proofs. I mean, we're there. We've got like 6, 7 different parallels there. But that's 96. What about this set from 95 Score? And this is the set that I've been kind of building to, because this is something really cool and special about this set that I'm really pleased that I was able to pick this up. So this is just your base 95 Score card. Nothing too fancy. This is it, 95 Score, Greg Maddux. Even though it is a Score card, you'll see on the back that it does say Score 95, and then underneath there, in really small letters, if we can focus, it says a Pinnacle brand right there. So Pinnacle first started making cards in 92, and of course they would continue making, they were some of the most innovative cards that the world had ever seen from those years of 92 up to 98. And, they took on Score toward the end. They even took on Donruss as well. And anyway, I just love them. Now, Score, they started their own 1 per pack parallel called the Gold Rush, and they had those in 94, and they continued the Gold Rush cards in 95. And if you take a look, they actually changed quite a bit of what they did to the actual surface. The actual face of the card is now, it's not just a color accent on a border, it's not just a foil stamp, it's not just a facsimile signature. This entire card has now a gold foil finish on the border, and the whole surface of the card is foil board instead of just a paper card. So they are making this parallel very distinctive, a little bit different. This isn't just an electric diamond. This isn't just a, they are changing the actual, the actual surface of the card is now different, the entire thing. And so that marks a pretty big change. Now, they also did something else very neat. What they did was they had something what you could do. So they had the Gold Rush, which on the back, you can tell they have the stamp there that says Gold Rush right there on the stats. So you can always tell which one it is even from the back. But there was a third parallel, and depending on how you want to call it, there's a fourth one. So let's start with the third one. So the third one is the Platinum Team Set. And the Platinum Team Set is fantastic. It is one of the prettiest cards you will ever see, and this one was not actually ever inserted into packs. In order to get the Platinum Team Set card, what you had to do was you had to collect the entire team of whatever team you wanted to submit in, whether it was Braves or Mariners or whoever. You'd have to collect the entire team as a Gold Rush card. So all the parallels. And then you'd have to get a special redemption card. Those were seated in there also. Send them in to Pinnacle, and they would send you back an entire team set of the Platinum. And look at this beautiful Platinum shimmer. It's just fantastic for 95 score. I did a top 90s shine video and featured these kind of cards as some of my prime specimens of delightful mid-90s shine. And these cards are fantastic. They are epic. They are wonderful. I think they're just some of the prettiest cards made in 95. And so, just like we have on the back, so these will say Gold Rush. If we take a look there. This one, if we focus a little bit, there we go. We have this one says, if you can see it, it's kind of tough to see, it says Platinum Team Set. Right there. So, see the difference there. All right, well, here comes the rub. I said that there are arguably a fourth one. So is this a rainbow? I think that one can argue that yes it is. All the colors are in fact different. They have now changed the background sufficiently where we have a paper card, a foil card, and now this crazy, awesome speckle, hollow, shine, shimmer, whatever you want to call it. Whatever it is, it's lovely, it's gorgeous. But here's the issue. The most recent pickup, or one of my more recent pickups that I'm really pleased with, it turns out that what Pinnacle started to do, so with these Platinum cards, they made 4,950 sets, so just under 5,000 of them. They did not serial number them, but that's how many they made. So there was a print run. But again, I don't know how many of those were actually redeemed. How many of those team sets were actually sent in as the full sets to redeem. So in reality, how many of these are actually out there? I would estimate less than that. Now, just because they weren't actually redeemed, did they not get snuck out, backdoored at some point if they didn't get redeemed? I have no idea. That is very possible. But I do think that it either likely that, there were plenty who probably, there were certainly some teams that wouldn't have been worthwhile to redeem. I don't know if teams like the 95 Pirates or Brewers really didn't have many star players to make it worthwhile to redeem them for the whole team sets. Whereas if you had the Mariners and you'd have, Edgar Martinez, Alex Rodriguez, Ken Griffey Jr., Randy Johnson, and heck, even the Braves had a bunch of Hall of Famers too with Maddox and Glavine and Smoltz and Chipper and so you had a bunch of these guys, McGriff, that would make it really worthwhile to want to redeem that set. But here comes the rub. When you submitted these cards, this Gold Rush team set, to get the corresponding Platinum team set back, what Pinnacle started to do, their intent, was to take the Gold Rush cards and they were going to stamp them. They were going to punch them with the Pinnacle logo. And that punched version was going to be returned back to you so that you couldn't redeem it again, right? Because you had to have something that was going to indicate that you couldn't submit the same card twice. And it made sense to do that. Now, what's fascinating is that whether or not they were either inundated by so many or it was too time consuming for them to do this, very soon after they started to do that, they stopped that practice. So, which leads me to believe, well, how were they then to know which cards had already been sent in to be redeemed? Or did they just not care at that point and said, all right, fine, we'll send another one? I don't know. But what I have for you today is a punched version with, take a look at the holes in there, if it'll focus, there we go. And this is the Pinnacle logo. These are holes that are in here. I don't know if you can see behind it well enough, but these are holes through the card. And these holes form that Pinnacle logo. So to find a hole punched, a redeemed version of a 95 Gold Rush is pretty challenging to do. These cards do not come up all that often, and when they do, they can be a bit pricey. You know, looking at guys like Frank Thomas and Cal Ripken, those kind of cards can quite easily fetch $50, $80, $100, somewhere in that range. Heck, there was a Will Clark that sold for over $300. And so again, considering the power rankings about where Maddux stacks up with these guys, I would expect the Maddux to be, valued actually pretty similarly to Cal Ripken. And so I was very, very pleased to be able to pick this card up for what I consider to be a tremendous deal. This card was listed incorrectly as what I think is really funny. They listed it as an Arizona Diamondbacks stamp or promotional card is how it was listed, which is really funny because these holes really do look a lot like the Arizona Diamondbacks logo if you think about it. So I actually understand that. Now, of course, this is 95. Diamondbacks and Devil Rays weren't actually added as expansion teams till 98. So no, this couldn't actually be a Diamondbacks logo, although there were like inaugural Marlins and Rockies, stamps on the early 90s Topps cards too, back in 92 Topps and stuff like that, and 93 Topps, I guess. That's when they had those. So I was able to pick this card up for about $20. And I just am pinching myself that I was able to acquire a card that's this cool, that has this amount of history to it. And I can't help but think about Mookie Chilson a little bit, looking at all these beautiful holes punched in the card. Now, they're not pinholes, to be fair. But still, how often can you try to collect cards intentionally that have holes in them? It's not every day that you see that. So anyway, I wanted to share this, but also give just a little bit of a history lesson as to so again, to complete the rainbow. And like I said, whether you call this a 3-card rainbow or a 4-card, depending on if you've got the punched versus the intact Gold Rush card, there we have it. We have, depending on how you define it, perhaps one of the first hobby rainbows in history. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.